Welcome back, everyone, to the Tojo Dojo for another episode of Pig's Ear in Review, one of the only places where we've been watching and we're discussing what we've been watching and what we've been playing. I'm Myshtuff, joined by Riku Rose. How you doing today?
I'm good, thanks, mate. You?
Not too bad, not too bad. I'm glad the weather's cooling down a little bit, at least by me. Getting ready for spooky Halloween season.
Oh, I live in the sun. So.
That's true. I will say, yeah, it's brutal here, or it was, but I'm glad. I guess for you, you can never escape that. Unfortunately.
My shoes are melting when I go outside.
Just permanent sandals. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. So today we got some interesting stuff to chat about. I'm very curious about what you're going to talk about since how you phrased it to me. Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis. Or is there no 7? Is it just Final Fantasy Ever Crisis?
No, it's Final Fantasy VII.
Okay. Ever Crisis. And then for me, I kind of have, to some extent, a 2-for-1 combo here where I'm going to talk about a documentary I watched called First Person Shooter, the documentary, I guess. I think it's just called First Person Shooter in general. But then also I've been playing the Quake 2 remaster, which sort of goes along with that a little bit. So there's a lot of interesting stuff I want to talk about that one. But yeah, before I go into that, I'll toss it over to you to talk to me about this fascinating game you've been playing.
So, Final Fantasy... I don't really play mobile games.
Mm-hmm. Same.
Despite the fact we all carry them in our pockets at all time, and there's such a thing now where you even... people's mums are playing Candy Crush.
Yeah, I've never been a mobile gamer, ever.
No. And I don't know why. Like, I do think you can make a good mobile game, but I look at the majority of the stuff and I'm just like, eh. Like, I saw a screenshot the other day for Resident Evil 4. They're bringing that to the new iPhone. And all of these button prompts taking up 3/4 of the screen. And I'm like, that just looks horrible. Who would want to play a game like that?
Yeah, I think I'm just like already inundated with games as it is, that it's like I don't need even more at all times. So I've never really gotten into it.
Yeah, I've played that odd little weird thing.
Sure.
There was a game with where the screen was entirely blank and you put headphones in, and the idea was you were on a spaceship where the power's gone out and you can't see anything.
Okay, that's innovative.
So you like walk around and they're like, "I'll follow like this noise and stuff like that." It was. I think Benedict Cumberbatch was the voice in it.
All right, interesting.
Before he went Marvel, you know.
Yeah.
There was like another game where like you got prompts every so often. It was like you were meant to be helping a spaceman, and like he'd be like, "All right, I'm going to walk to this mountain," and here goes. It's going to probably take me a while, and then you get a notification like 2 hours later. Mm-hmm. Like I've finally reached the top. Like, what should I do here?
Fascinating.
Which it uses the technology that's there in an interesting way. It wasn't the best thing ever, but at least it was doing something.
Mm-hmm. But that's not what we're talking about.
No. But this one, come back to this, because Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis. Final Fantasy VII, if you don't know already, is my favourite game ever. Mm-hmm. I'm a sucker for anything Final Fantasy VII. I moan about a lot of the stuff involved with the series, but I play it all, I watch it all, and then...
Yep, as of yesterday, they gave more... Yeah, they announced more stuff for the next part of the remake coming out early next year, leaving fans probably even more confused for what the hell's going on.
I'm also a fan of Kingdom Hearts, which just confuses me all the time as well. It's a complicated relationship I have with Square Enix. So I played this game because they were saying like, so it is a retelling of the entire series.
Okay.
So it includes the original Final Fantasy, the spin-offs, and an original story.
What about the movie?
I don't 100% know, because here's the thing. They've said they're going to add things as they go, right?
Okay.
So the game starts off, and it is like a remake of Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
But in the style, if they sort of just did a proper HD version of the original one, not like a full-blown remake. So all the little chibi characters are like a more HD chibi.
Yeah.
You know, the backgrounds are all redone, things like that, right? And then they've done like the beginning of Crisis Core.
Okay.
But they've done it in the old chibi style, so it matches the other.
Yeah, that'd be weird if it like went back and forth between the styles.
But it does in battles. In the battles, it actually looks like the remake.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, but in the original Final Fantasy VII, when you went in the battles, they all look different, right?
Right. Right. Yeah.
So at the moment, there is only three stories: the original Crisis Core, and this new story that they've created, which is about young Sephiroth. They keep teasing. We're going
Young
to learn about
Sephiroth.
Sephiroth, the real past of him, even though like we all know. Um,
Fair enough.
Now you play it first, and at first I was kind of enjoying it because you're doing the reactor mission.
Okay.
The battles are very simple
Hmm.
because also you're on a touch screen, so they can't make it where it's very like you have to be split second.
Sure.
Gives you a lot of time. It's very easy, very forgiving.
Yeah, not too
All
bad.
the button prompts are big, so you don't accidentally hit the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And then I got out of the reactor mission and I went to the main menu for the first time because it boots you straight into the game. You play through the thing, and then I unlocked about 20 different types of materials, stamina boosts, weapons, outfits, and I'm like, what the hell is going on?
Where did this come from?
Yeah, and then it's like, do you want to upgrade your weapons so your battle power is higher? And do you want
There
to
now it's a mobile game.
Yeah, and I'm like, what the fuck? And legit, it's like, click this. We're going to teach you how to enhance Cloud's Buster Sword, okay? And then it's like, it's gone up 20 levels. You can't go any further. You need this material. Okay, calm down. Like, you can do battle quests, which is where you fight an enemy to get this and that and this and that. And I'm like, all right. I'm like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I played through a bunch of the rest of the game. So I played through up to where you meet Aerith in the original. And then it went, hey, you've now unlocked Crisis Core. You can't go any further in the original until you do more in Crisis Core.
Oh, wow.
So,
all right.
So I was like, okay, so I did like up to the Wutai mission.
Okay.
In the opening of Crisis Core, right? Same thing, very easy, just blasting through it, right? Then it was like, right, now you've unlocked the new story.
Okay.
Right? And I'm like, okay. So I start playing, and then just about halfway through, it goes, by the way, you need to be a lot stronger for this next battle. I'm like, well, okay. Like,
what do I do?
So I'm then looking at all through there's like legit like 8 different menus of things you can level up. I'm just jamming stuff. I don't know what. Like, and it's like little bars are going up, and it's like, hey, do you want to spend $5 to get a guaranteed 5-star weapon?
That's where they get you.
Do you want the season pass? No. And then I logged in because I've been playing it in bed. Like, I'm like, half hour before I go to sleep. I'll just
sure.
And I went in one night, and it was like the beach event is live.
Ooh.
And I click on it, and it is this little story of Cloud, Aerith, and Tifa at the beach. And a Tomberry keeps harassing people on the beach, so they keep fighting it. And if you complete it and get enough points and enough watermelons, you can trade in the watermelons for their beach outfits, so then you can use it in the main game.
This is what Cloud was always meant to do.
Right, and I'm just like,
what is this?
Exactly, and I'm like, right, so I'm like leveling up, or just trying to level up stuff so I can at least see this new story.
Sure.
Or whatever, because they keep saying, Square Enix have done it as well with Kingdom Hearts, where it turns out the mobile games matter, the story.
I guess so. I mean, it depends. I don't know. Like, even if that's the thing, even if there was a good story, something about playing on a mobile phone does not compel me to want to. No. I think it's because I would have to do it for hours on end, and I can't do like bite-sized chunks like that. I just couldn't do it personally.
Yeah. But this was the thing, because the battles weren't hard and there was no challenge. I was like, there's this little button in the corner that says auto. And I hit it. And it automatically does the battles for you.
All right.
So I was like, okay. So I hit auto, and they did it. And then there's a little fast forward button. And I hit fast forward.
Is there even a game?
And then and then they go through, they kill the monster, and then the story carries on.
Okay.
And I was like, I can't be. The battles are not fun because they're either you're strong enough or you're not. There's really not much of an in-between. There's no skill. This is a game that is just built there for you to spend money to level up. Right, and if you aren't, you got to either grind or drop money.
Sure.
There's not much skill, much strategy whatsoever.
Yeah.
Either the monster's going to kill you, or you're going to kill the monster.
Yeah,
So
that
then
seems
I'm
to be
like,
that seems to be just really quick the go-to for like any mobile game is either you can wait or pay money. And I
mhm.
think that in itself is why I can't do mobile games as well. It's like I could never be bothered that much to pay money for something like
But you know what I did? I woke up one morning, poured some oats in a bowl,
that.
put it in the
Mhm.
microwave, went through 2 minutes of story.
Mhm.
Oh, my oats are ready. Oh, it's a battle. Auto, put the phone down, got my oats, started eating my oats as the battle's going, right? Picked up my phone, the battle was over.
Uh-huh.
Go through the story. Boop, boop, boop. Next, oh, there's a battle. Gotta go brush my teeth.
I mean, is the story
And I
actually
brush.
compelling you though? Like to continue
So,
forward?
as I said, like, it is the beginning of the story because they're going to
Yeah.
update the game as they go on.
Sure.
Like, the point where I was with Crisis Core, it legit says, like, this will carry on in an update.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. They've said they're going to include like that Dirge Cerberus game,
Mhm.
the PS2 shooter. They're going to
Yep.
include before Crisis, right? Which was a mobile game that only came out in Japan.
That's true. Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
Right. So I want to see these stories
Okay,
because
that's
I've
cool.
never seen them. Right. And
Yeah.
so I'm like, okay, just trying to get through it. But this is it. I'm essentially just putting the phone on autopilot and going about my day and coming back. And then there's like these three people in this new story I've never heard of go,
Mhm.
oh, monster's coming. And then you fight the monster and they go, oh, that was close. Let's go to the next area. Oh, no, a
Mm.
monster's here.
I mean, I guess it is supposed to be a game, but like, if you don't care, or it's interesting because at this point, are you just in this now just to see whatever this new story is going to be, or those
Yeah, well,
previously unreleased ones in the West? I guess.
I want to see those because they also come from a time before the whole gacha thing kind of caught on
Right.
because that was like an episodic mobile game like in the mid
Right.
2000s, right? Before
Hmm.
like microtransactions took off and everything.
Right.
So I'm interested in that. Another thing that really made me annoyed is that more effort has been put into this than any port of the original Final Fantasy VII.
How so?
Well, the chibi characters, right? They're still the chibi, but they're like HD. The backgrounds are new. The
Oh, got it.
music is awesome. They've
Hmm.
updated the music, right?
Well, that's cool. Yeah.
When the characters talk, like a little, you know how in the original it'd be like Barrett, and then it'd be like the words, right?
Right. Right.
In this, it's like a speech cloud at the bottom, a beautiful like Tetsuya Nomura 2D drawing of them
Mm.
next to it, and stuff like that. And I'm like, why when they released Final Fantasy VII on like the original PS1 game
Hmm.
on modern consoles, why didn't they put this level of effort into it?
Yeah,
And you
that's a
know what?
shame.
You could have charged $40 for it and had
Probably.
the original still in it.
Hmm.
You know, so
Hmm.
you don't get all those people that bitch that they don't like the new style,
Yeah.
things like that, right?
Right.
It's frustrating that this has got more love and attention than possibly one of the most loved games ever. Because
Yeah.
I've told you about like my wife is watching me play the remake or whatever, and it's kind of
Right.
tough to try and get people caught up on this story.
Hmm.
Now, the only way going into like Rebirth, right, and the
Hmm.
remake project, the only way people can catch up on this story is A, play a PS1 game with little Playmobil people, bad translation
Right. Right.
in 2023.
Colorful language.
Yeah. Or a gachapon mobile game that is just trying to bleed you of every dollar you have.
And just to be clear, like you don't obviously you don't have to pay, but like, does
No.
that block you from progressing in the story, or do you have to wait longer, or no?
No, well, you just have to grind. That's
Right.
the
Okay.
thing. Is
Yeah.
like you can go like, oh, I just want to do EXP battles where you level up, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And as I
Okay.
said, I just put that on autopilot and I'll walk away from it. Like I'll empty the dishwasher while it plays. You know,
So what's the advantage of paying if you can just do autopilot? It's just
you can
quicker.
just you get like what do you call it? It's like a when you do the weapon pulls, you get
Hmm.
like crystals, right? So it's
Sure.
like 3,000 crystals to get 10 weapons.
Okay.
And there's a chance that one might be this amazing weapon that's really
Oh, I
powerful.
see what you're saying. Got it. Got it.
Or you can dump money and like get guaranteed 5-star weapons.
Hmm. I see what you
Yeah.
mean. Got it.
It's that whole FIFA Ultimate Team
Sure.
sort of thing where they're promising you that your odds are better.
Yeah.
If you put the money in.
Yeah, I see what you mean now.
There is also legit on the main screen. It's like, do you want a free thing? And I was like, okay. And I clicked it. And it was like, watch this 30-second ad. And I watched a 30-second ad for Monopoly Go. Right. And I don't know what this says about a capitalist society that I'm watching an ad for a game called Monopoly in order to have fun.
This is what gaming has come to now.
Yeah. It just
feels dirty.
If you had said to me, like, I think this could have been a really good project that you could have even put on consoles, right? The idea that you're going to get this for even $40, right? All of the game's stories are going to be retold. It's going to have a consistent art style through. It's going to be a little bit simplified. Okay, It's not going to have everything, but it gives you the main story beats. Everyone can get caught up on the whole story. You haven't got to go dig out a PS2 to play the Vincent side game and things like that, right? I think that could have been like quite a cool project, and I would have paid $40 for that. And I think someone who's not in love with the series, you probably would have paid $40.
Yeah, because that's why I played the port of the original version before I played the remake, because I wanted to get caught up on the story finally for the first time, and at least still experience it. So it would have been nice to do it in a more modern way. Absolutely, yeah. It's just one of those games that it's like a cornerstone of gaming, but to experience it is just a little difficult. So
yeah. And I know that this is probably going to make him a lot of money because, like, Gachapon's huge in Japan. Every time you go onto this app, it's like, oh, to thank you for helping us reach this million downloads, we're giving you free crystals, right?
Right.
And, like, I went on the other night, it's like 5 million downloads. So they're going to make money. It only takes, 1,000 people to drop $1,000 and every week, and they're making bank, right?
Right.
And that's what's kind of sad as well is I really think that you could have made a good product here that would have been well liked, would have made decent money. But certain companies, Square Enix is one of them, because when I went to download this game, there was legit about 4 or 5 Final Fantasy gacha games.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And that's it. They are always chasing this. Because there's like 2 or 3 Kingdom Hearts mobile games.
Yeah, Konami as well, I think, became more known. Like, I mean, famously, however many years ago, they basically said they're going to stop AAA game development to go to, like, pachinko and mobile games because they know that's where they can make... Like, I get why they want to do it. They clearly want to make money, and that's the latest model to get quick, easy turnaround money. But, like, it's just diluting what good games can be, and... I'm not a fan.
Well, I saw some video game economist, whatever you call them.
Economist.
Predict stuff, right?
Fortune teller.
Yeah. And they pretty much said, for one AAA game, you can fund about 30 mobile Gachapon games, right? And you only need one of those to take off to make as much money as you would on that AAA, like, PlayStation exclusive.
Yeah, it's just a numbers game. Just you're going to eventually strike something, hopefully, and you'll make money.
I mean, it's like what a lot of movie indie studios do. They fund a bunch of $5 million movies. You spend $100 million doing that for 50 of them. If one of those movies makes $200-300 million, you've made your money. I
mean, that's kind of like the Blumhouse model, to be honest. Like all their horror movies, like some of them are genuinely good. A24 as well, and like you can't fault them for it. Like I get it.
The difference is they go for quality.
Usually,
they go for word of mouth. Someone goes, "Oh, have you seen Uncut Gems?"
Right.
You're like, well, and then everyone goes and sees it because it's good. Whereas this is just trying to hook into It's trying to hook into that ape addiction mentality part of our brain.
Yeah.
Rather than the seeking out quality part, which is a little bit more disgusting.
Yeah, it's exactly clearly. It's very addictive. It's gambling. That's all it is.
Yeah. I mean, there was this great video someone put out because like EA are trying to like argue, it's not gambling, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And there was this kid on stream like cheering over like FIFA Ultimate Team. And then they just replaced the FIFA Ultimate Team with him at like a online blackjack or like roulette wheel. Like this Yeah.
Yeah, it's about the same. Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, at this point, I think we're just not the demographic for the stuff. I mean, clearly, I don't know. Like, I'm trying to think if any of my favorite franchises suddenly got a mobile game, would I go and play it? And I still think the answer is no. Like, it couldn't compel me, I guess.
I think the thing that's annoying here is the fear that it will come back to affect the whole series. Like,
Hmm.
imagine if they said, like, oh, we're bringing back Star Trek Picard for Series 4, right?
Yeah.
But you gotta, like, you're gonna be lost if you don't. Just check out the story
Hmm.
that's in between,
Right.
which they just don't do in other media.
Funny enough, actually, with Star Trek specifically, they in the last like since the era of all the new shows about 5 years ago, they now come out with comic like mini 3 to 4 issue comic series that take place between some of the seasons. And I've picked up a few of them, and they're not like super important, but they are like little tidbits of more information. So funny enough, they actually are kind of doing that now.
Yeah, but when you read a comic book, you don't get to a point where you go to turn the page and goes, you're not strong enough to do that.
Insert a quarter to read
Yeah,
the next page.
you can pay extra now to turn that page,
Hmm.
or you can read what you've already read 3 times more again.
Come on, which one do you want?
That's the difference.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So yeah,
Um,
it's a shame.
Overall, thumbs down.
Oh,
Um,
really?
it's offensive on 2 levels. One, that it is just gambling and trying to take advantage of people, which
Hmm.
I've got no issue with gambling as a whole, right? I think
Sure, sure.
I've gambled on like soccer before, where you're like, oh, okay, this will make the game more fun, but I like throw like $5 on it,
Yeah, there's
and I
something
can
about
afford that.
there's something about these types of games and microtransactions in general that's just more predatory, given the audience that it's trying to go for.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is gambling can be fun,
Hmm.
right? But
Agreed.
when it's
Yep.
being predatory, I don't like it,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Um, and then secondly, it's offensive as well because this has given more love and attention to the
Hmm.
original game. It's considered one of the best ever, and than any other ports they've ever done.
That is so weird. That is so weird.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my
But
goodness.
okay, over to you.
Yeah, wow, what a shame. What a shame. All right, so I'll do something a little more positive, I think, for me. So I love watching documentaries about anything even mildly interesting to very interesting. For example, I've watched a documentary on the origins of General Tso's chicken because I was curious enough because I just wanted to know where did it come from. I won't
I
spoil it for
watched a
you here.
documentary about a guy who made love dolls for people.
Hey, me too. I watched that one as well as
Yeah,
there was another one on Netflix about people who are in love with inanimate objects. That was a fascinating one as well.
I've seen something like that before as well.
So documentaries, for whatever reason, I don't know, I can't get enough of them. But in particular, whenever there's documentaries about video games, and like the history of video games, I'm very much fascinated, given how much we play games, and it's always funny to see the origins of video games and companies and how these people started, and it's just such an it's still a relatively young art form, so it's just crazy to see how all these these companies develop. So
I mean, it's been
yeah,
around for probably about 50 years now, when you really think about
I guess
it. The
that's fair.
Atari
Yeah.
was early 80s, but you think Pong and stuff like that was even before that.
Yeah, true,
I
true.
mean, we're now getting to a point where Jeff Keighley's talking at the Video Game Awards about how people are dying of old age that like worked on
Right.
the original games, like he's
Yeah.
bringing
Hmm.
out people that you look at that are grandpas and
Hmm.
grandmas that worked on games when they were like in their infant stage.
Yeah, which I mean, and I'm glad that's why various companies are starting now to make documentaries, not just like officially for like theatrical or whatever release, but even like we were talking right before we started. There's a couple of YouTube channels that I follow that talk about video game history and preservation. Like Gaming Historian is a great channel. I think you said what was the channel you recommended?
No Clip was the
No
one I
Clip.
said was suggesting
Hmm.
to you.
Yep, yep. So there's a few of those. So I just love. It doesn't matter if it's just a quick 5 minute story or if it's like a full feature or whatever. I could watch that stuff for hours. And so the thing that I watched is something called First Person Shooter, the documentary, essentially. And they actually, funny enough, have made another documentary series that I love. So one of my other favorite things is just horror movies in general. And they made a 3-part series about 80s horror movies, like not
Mhm.
just about it, but like they interviewed directors, actors, writers, cosmetics people, and they did each documentary is 4 hours long, and they made 3 of them all about the 80s horror. And they're actually about to make one about the 90s next, which I'm definitely going to be funding because like they just do an amazing job, like so good with how they tackle it,
And that
basically.
company's name is Ken Burns.
I should probably look up what the company's name is before I forget. FPS. I don't know if they actually. I don't know what the name is anymore. I can't remember. Look it up after, or maybe I'll paste it somewhere. But
If you're watching this, you have a device that has access to all
yes,
human knowledge.
yeah, look it up on your phone. It'll take 3 seconds here. Anyway, so that documentary series was amazing. And then the next one that they made was First Person Shooter. And this is 4.5 hours, which I had to break up over a couple of days. I'm not sitting there like 4.5 hours straight. That's going to be a bit much, I think for most people to do in one sitting. But really, what this is, it is a definitive history of the entirety of first person shooters. And what's cool though is like, okay, if I were to ask you, what do you think as like the modern start of first person shooters? Like what would come to mind for you?
GoldenEye.
Interesting. Okay.
For me, because modern, really, that's like when it started like involving like analogs and
Yeah.
stuff like that. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously you have stuff before that like Doom,
Right.
Wolfenstein,
Right. Right.
things
Right.
like that. But then I feel like it's not even just the gameplay mechanics themselves either, but it's the fact that like first person shooter, you always nowadays as well. It's more competitive. It's
Mhm.
multiplayer,
Mhm.
online. GoldenEye was everyone come around, play it together,
Yeah.
things like that. And then if you want to go like modern, I'd probably say like Call of Duty 4,
Right. Mhm.
Modern Warfare, or maybe there's a case for Halo even. Like,
Yeah. And that's the beauty of it. They go through all of that. And that's I think what was really cool about this documentary because for me, and I think probably for most people, it is things like Wolfenstein 3D or Doom. And when they spend a good chunk of time on that era, which was super definitive for the whole genre as a whole, but they even go before that about the generation of like Apple II first person games just in general. Like doesn't have to be a shooter, but just in general first person games and like how did that start? And they have programmers that they're still interviewing who are still alive, thankfully, to go like, look, I made a game with lines on the screen in first person because that's literally all I could do. And
mm-hmm.
that's where like there's that famous quote that what is it? Necessity is the mother of all invention. Basically,
Yeah.
like they did it because they had to, and then they made some game for fun, and that became a genre.
Well, we talk about like Yu Suzuki all the time, the guy who made like
Yeah.
Hang On, Space Harrier, Shenmue, right?
Hmm.
And reading interviews with him, he's not a big video game fan.
Exactly.
He
Exactly.
seemed more like a guy that just enjoyed. Here's a bunch of stuff. Do something with it. An inventor, like a problem solver. He
Hmm.
talked about how fun it was, like when the Iron Curtain fell, and suddenly they had access to all like the Russian tech,
Yeah. Hmm.
and like messing with that stuff. And back then, people were just like, "What can we do with this?"
And I think so funny enough, I wanted to have this might be its own video one day we do, but I'll kind of shoehorn it into this one because we've had this conversation before about how back in our day when we were playing games, it was massive leaps in progression in terms of technology, gameplay, features, whatever. Whereas nowadays, it's more like diminishing returns of like, yeah, they're like little incremental nudges, but you don't
Mm-hmm.
see those massive jumps in progress essentially. And this documentary kind of touches upon that a little bit, and kind of to what you were saying, where the early days of this genre in gaming as a whole, it was people were doing things for the fun of it because there was no precedent. It was like they're just going to do it. Some of it
Mm-hmm.
didn't stick and was garbage, to be clear, but then obviously a good amount of it stuck, and then it went on to become the like founding companies of this genre. Like they talk about the founding of id Software, who did like Wolfenstein and Doom and Quake and things like that, and how the main two guys, John Carmack and John Romero, just started and like they didn't really have a template. They were just creating things. They were a bunch of kids just doing stupid shit, staying up 15 hours in a row, like drinking and playing metal music nonstop in an office until they passed out, and then they got up the next day and started doing other fun shit. So there is, there's a balance, of course, but there is. I think that's the fascinating thing that I kind of saw throughout the entirety of this documentary. It was like these people just wanted to keep pushing the boundaries and doing interesting things. And I think kind of related to that, there's also this, we were also talking right before this about how companies sometimes, like, they kind of play nice with each other, but then other times they're like at each other's heads a little bit depending on who's in charge. But I didn't realize how many of these PC like shooter companies were founded by the same group of like 5 to 10 people that all knew each other, that either worked at each other's companies or were doing it just to like, all right, I'm going to do one more better than you. And like, that's more or less how like Duke Nukem was started. It was like, okay, they saw Doom, and they wanted to make it a better, more funnier version, and then they made Duke Nukem, like another company. So it was just fascinating to see the progression of those early days. But then, to your point, they get into, okay, at that point, once the PC market was becoming more formed, the console market started arriving, and then you had GoldenEye, and that was basically like, look, we had a license and we wanted to make something fun, and we're like, let's fucking make, like, the multiplayer mode was a complete accident. Like, it was not meant.
I've read before that was like a month before they launched, they just threw it in or something.
It basically, the programmer was doing it as a side thing with, like, so they programmed the single player mode during the day. After hours, him and a few other people were playing a modified version of it as multiplayer, and their boss even said, like, what the fuck are you doing? Focus on the single player. And they're like, yeah, but like, we did that for the day, we want to just have some fun. And it became like popular enough that they're like, oh, let's just throw this in. And obviously it became like the most popular multiplayer game of the N64 like ever, and it's just shit like that just fascinates me. And then
do they go in about when Shigeru Miyamoto went to Rare when they were making it?
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit.
You heard that story?
Yeah, like he was, well, because it wasn't just about like the violence being an issue either, but like I think they were just I can't remember the specifics. I think they just briefly mentioned it in this documentary. So I don't know, if you have it, feel free to go for it.
I've read it before. This is a few years back, so I might be getting a point wrong. But apparently, like, Nintendo came and Shigeru Miyamoto, and apparently he was like horrified at the level of violence on the screen, and said to him that the credits should, like, when the credits are playing, it should show James Bond visiting everyone in hospital.
Oh no, they didn't go into that. But that's hilarious. That's so funny. But that's the thing, though, is like they probably shouldn't have made this game for the N64, but it kind of just worked out, and then people loved it. But then they go on to, of course, talking about Halo, which was, I think the other interesting part was, it wasn't just about the games, it was about the scene around the games. So like with Doom and Quake, they were talking about the evolution and emergence really of like esports and speed running and all that stuff, and that kind of came out of that. And then with Halo, that sort of, in Halo 2 more so, brought about like Xbox Live, and that became a thing. And it's funny though that they covered up till recent times too, because around like mid to late 2000s, that's when I stopped playing first-person shooters for the most part, because up until that point I played the shit out of them on computers specifically. So like, Doom, Quake, Unreal, all of these games, and even Halo and GoldenEye and stuff. And that's where I never really thought about like, why did I stop playing those games at that point? And then they really touched upon it, which was, well, that became the emergence of like military shooters and the gritty ultra realism. And then even those original founders of those older companies were like, yeah, we kind of just didn't care for them anymore because it wasn't about fun anymore. Like, they just weren't fun.
I remember a few years back we were talking about how none of us had any interest in FPSs anymore.
Yeah.
And I like went on like my PlayStation account or like my Xbox account and like went back, and I was like, I can't think of a shooter I've played in the last 2 generations.
Yeah.
And I went back and it was like Halo Reach or something was the last FPS game I played.
Yeah, like, which is funny because because I used to play the shit out of them, and I'm like, what happened? And that's kind of what they talk about, is like, yeah, it kind of went in this new direction. It became more about, like I said, the gritty realism and turning them into movies, and it became about these like ultra refined like guns and mechanics, and it's like, this isn't what made those games. It's not to say that there can't be an audience for it, but that's not what that originally came from, essentially.
They hyper focused on the sort of competitiveness of it all.
That too, exactly.
You know, the leveling up and the things like that. Whereas you don't level up in Doom or Quake and GoldenEye.
There's no need to. Right. It's just about the fun mechanics. But I will say, then they started getting into like a different definition of first-person shooter, which are things like Portal, for example. Like, that's a first-person shooter, but granted, it's a very weird alternate version of a first-person shooter. And then, you get competitive games like Team Fortress and Overwatch and all those types of games. So it was funny how they kind of showed that evolution, and I'm so glad that the last maybe 20 minutes or so, they focused on what are now affectionately called boomer shooters. And it's funny because for the last couple of years, I've gotten back into shooters again because of those games. So I'll talk about this in a second with the Quake 2 remaster. But for example, there are games like Ion Fury, Dusk. I played a game recently called Turbo Overkill. All those games are in the style of like Duke Nukem, Deus Ex, Quake, Unreal, and they even look like them too, just like with a somewhat modern, coat of paint. But it's purposely meant to look like that era of PC game, but with a bit of a modern touch to it. And they're some of the most fun shooters I've played in a long time because they're about fun and goofy environments, weird demons and shit like that. None of this Call of Duty, Battlefield, none of that kind of crap.
I mean, like that could be a problem with gaming as a whole.
Sure.
I'm not one of those like games shouldn't be political people, but there's a lot less games that are just fun, right? We joked recently about how all the top games this year so far have been remakes,
remasters, spiritual successors.
But it's all wacky stuff as well. You think of Resident Evil 4, that game's stupid.
Yeah, I love it though.
But that wouldn't be made now. It would be a lot more serious.
Yeah.
And like we saw the trailer yesterday for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. You got Cloud riding around on a Segway. You've got a dog riding a chicken. But they're things that people in the 90s drew.
Yeah.
Being wacky, trying stuff out, right? And they're being now remade in modern. But then when you see games that are more modern, and it's a boardroom sitting somewhere.
Of course it is.
Imagine going into EA and being like, this is a dog riding a giant chicken.
Here's the charts that see
like, this is your goodbye meeting now. Like, it was nice having you at the company.
Let's check you into a mental hospital.
But no, then you just look at Call of Duty and go, well, why can't we make it like that?
Exactly. Yeah. So it is. I'm very glad that they actually talked about this resurgence and all of those. And once again, the cool thing is they have all of these original creators of these studios that created these games to talk about it. And they're like, yeah, I'm glad that this is having a resurgence again because you're getting back to the core of why people loved these games so much. And then once again, to kind of somewhat talk about this for just a minute. So there have been some remasters. Like a couple years ago, there was the Quake 1 remaster, and then Night Dive Studios, who've done an amazing job with other remasters, just did the Quake 2 remaster. And so I've been playing that. And what's great, so here's the thing. That game is awesome for a couple reasons. In terms of the remaster. So first of all, if you own the original one on Steam, like not Quake 1, but if you have the original version of Quake 2 on Steam, you get the remaster for free. So that's awesome. But even on other consoles, it's like $10. It's not that much. It's not just a remaster with quality of life stuff and, a fresh coat of paint, but here's the crazy thing. They made an entirely new expansion for the game, completely extra, that was never there. Because the original game was the base game and 2 expansions that came out like a year after. But for this remaster, they created a completely brand new 3rd expansion, which I've been playing through, and it's amazing. And on top of that, they included Quake 64 for free as well.
I played that. I had that on the N64, and I remember loving that game.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because a couple years ago, when they did the Doom remasters as well, which I also have, they did Doom 64 remastered for modern consoles and PC for like $5 or something. And people loved it. They're like, finally, we can play Doom 64, because it is a different game. It's not just a straight port of the original game. Same thing with Quake 64. It's not just Quake 1 or 2. It's a completely different game, and it's just included. So just as a quick mini review, thumbs up to Quake 2 Remaster. Highly recommend it. But it is funny though, because I went straight into playing this new expansion, and within 5 minutes, it's one of the most fun FPSs I've played in years. Like it's just so good. So yeah, I would. It's just funny watching this documentary overall. Like because we've talked about this plenty of times of, like I said, this progression of gaming and how things have changed, and obviously like any medium, if it goes on sufficiently long enough, is going to be diminishing returns, I feel like. But video games is interesting because the capability is there to keep pushing the technology, but
But it's
I
not the
don't know.
technology that needs pushing it. I think it's the
Or the
mechanics.
creativity.
Yeah,
Or yeah.
creativity. Yeah,
Hmm.
like I said this the other day in our chat, group chat. Like movies have it like probably every decade or so, where
Sure.
Quentin Tarantino comes along,
Yeah, yeah.
who turns things on its head.
Hmm.
And I know not everyone's the biggest Quentin Tarantino fan, but
Sure.
you can't deny the sort of impact he had on cinema in the
Yeah.
90s.
Hmm.
And you get people trying to replicate his style now. You know, you
Hmm.
could argue like James Gunn wouldn't exist without
Yeah.
Quentin Tarantino, right?
Hmm.
And then you get that every decade or so in cinema, and I think we're kind of in this point in gaming where we're looking around going,
Hmm.
where are these people that are going to turn this all on its head, do some really wacky stuff
Hmm.
that not all of it's going to stick, but it's going to be
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. And what's funny is, once again, the last part of the documentary kind of effectively touches on that, because now the technology effectively is there for anyone to make a game. And not
Mm-hmm.
that it's easy, but the technology has more or less been democratized, that anyone can pick up like Unity or Unreal or whatever and start making something. And that's basically what has happened with these boomer shooters is they're taking a somewhat modern approach to those 90 games, and they're some of the most fun, innovative games in general lately because they're just good. They're meant to be fun, and to your point, not these blockbuster like boardroom decision games. They're like, no, how it's 2 to 3 people making a fun game,
Yeah.
and that's it. So I don't know. It was just so in general, yeah, huge thumbs up to the documentary and Quake 2 remaster as well. But I would like, even if FPSs aren't your thing, I would still recommend watching at least parts of this. Like I said, it's 4.5 hours. So you might have to break it up a little bit, but it's just fascinating to see a genre just develop that much. Like I would love if this same company again did another documentary, but like RPGs or racing games or whatever. They could easily make 5 or 6 more of these on different genres of video games. And it's just, I'm pretty sure though you'll see the same conclusion amongst all of them, which is the original ones were made because of necessity and they had to do something, and then the next person leaped it a whole other way and another way, and it kept
Mm-hmm.
pushing boundaries. And once again, to be honest, that's kind of why even with like turn-based RPGs, I've seen. I mean, you could argue like Octopath or Triangle Strategy are kind of callbacks to those old games, but just with a fresh coat of modern paint, and people love them, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
so
We're
it's
also
just
just the
funny.
worst generation for nostalgia. We just fucking eat it up.
That too,
We
and
are
that is, yeah.
like the thing was like our parents' generation
Hmm.
were never like bring back Happy Days,
Right, right.
right? Whereas now our generation's like let's get a prequel about the Fonz.
Yeah. Well,
You know, like
we're getting that Frasier reboot.
but you know what I mean? Like my dad was
Yeah.
never at home like, I really wish they would just bring back every show and movie I loved.
Yeah, that is a good point, because and this is yet another discussion of like nostalgia is a dangerous thing, because on one hand it can be good to bring up past things and like reminisce and all that, but you also fall into the trap of like you never escape that if you just keep doing that over and over and over again.
Mm.
So it is a delicate balance, to be fair. All I'm saying is I'm glad these boomer shooters exist, and to be honest, it's still kind of a niche market. Like I don't see too many people raving about them for the most part, but like I just want that spirit to still be there of like pushing the envelope, trying new things. I don't care about the graphics. All the graphics of these boomer shooters look like they were made 30 years ago. That's not what I care about. It's just fun. Like it's a good game, you know.
Yeah, and also I do think people enjoying stuff breeds innovation as well. You talked about
Mhm.
how it's people just hanging out in a bedroom
Yeah.
making games, right? Having fun.
Yeah.
And like even when you look at the history of Apple and Microsoft,
Hmm.
they're all just a bunch of kids in a garage, like
Yeah.
hanging out, messing with stuff,
Right. Hmm.
while they were drinking.
Yeah, that's it. That's usually some sort of illicit substance is usually involved with a lot of these
Yeah.
stories.
Yeah, but then like you can say the same, like every iPhone now is just like little incremental updates.
Of course, of course.
But back in the day they were like, oh, let's just mess with this stuff and see what happens.
Yeah, and it's fascinating, and that's why, like, I think I may have mentioned this to you before. There's one channel on Twitch. Like, I don't watch Twitch too often, but there's one channel I watch where they do nothing but show old like technology videos, or like that's where I told you I saw random episodes of like Game Master and all that kind of stuff on it. But one of the things they show are like tech reviews and like literally like old E3s or even computer electronic shows conferences of like, ooh, 1994, here's the next Windows. And like you see, I think that's like almost the saddest thing is you see the potential of all the stuff that could be done, a lot of it which was envisioned and it came to fruition. But then you look at the shit we have now and it's like, really, this is what we've done with all this technology, like the dumb shit.
You know what makes me sad as well is like when you see those old videos, it's like a guy with a neck beard who's like stuttering on stage.
Yeah, yeah,
But that's more genuine
it
than the
is.
Microsoft executive that comes out in the members only jacket and is like,
Mm-hmm.
our team has been hard at work. And they're
Mm-hmm.
like perfect speak.
Mm-hmm.
There was that guy who like cried on the E3 stage like a few
Yeah,
years back with the little yarn thing because he was
yeah,
so excited about his game. Bring those people back. Like I
yes,
want the awkward people that
yes,
actually are passionate about this stuff and not
yes.
the executive who walked in one day and went, I'm going to present this at our
What
next conference.
what was it a few years? I don't know if it was the Video Game Awards or maybe like 1 or 2 years before Jeff Keighley started making it more official. There was one year where they were still sort of trying to figure out how this was going to work, and this is like burned into my memory. They brought on like a Schick razor like mascot, like like just for
Yes,
shaving, and
yes,
it was walking around, and literally even the announcer was didn't like know what to do, and it was the most awkward
yeah.
corporate soulless thing ever as they were about to announce, I'm sure, another Call of Duty or whatever. And I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, what is this? It was just
Oh,
so stupid. Oh, sorry. One more thing I'm going to mention since you mentioned Miyamoto. They did talk about the creation of the Xbox and how the couple of the creators were featured in the documentary. Bill Gates was not featured in the documentary, and I think I have a good idea why. Which is, well, granted, I'm sure he's doing a bajillion other things, but like they were talking about how they brought in the design of it to Bill Gates for that very first meeting of like, here's what the Xbox was going to be. And within the first 10 seconds, allegedly, according to the creators, Bill Gates walks in and just curses everyone out and says, what the fuck is this? And like chews all of them out. But to his fairness, after they talked about it, he ended up, of course,
yeah.
liking it and they launched it and made $1 billion. But like, Bill Gates was a nut job in himself. Like,
Yeah.
innovative, but my God, he was a very odd individual.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
anyways, thumbs up for this. Highly recommend it. I think it's a fascinating history. I know this company is already going to do other documentaries in terms of horror, but I really hope they come back to do another video game one. Like they always do a good job. So definitely highly recommend it, and the Quake 2 remaster as well. Unfortunately, Final Fantasy Ever Crisis, big thumbs down. Can't recommend
I'm
that
sure
one.
you got to download it right after this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course. Of course. But yeah. So if you've experienced any of these, definitely let us know. But until next time, we'll catch you then. And thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Talk to you
All
later.
right.